What is up guys, Kane here. In this one we will be going over Fiona's specialties and Ultimate, the Inferno second generation faction leader. So from the get-go, I'm going to tell you that Fiona and Xeron are two entirely different formations and should not be compared to one another. And I can explain it simply by saying Xeron is a burst type formation that overbuffs one unit to do extreme and quick damage, while Fiona is more into buffing the entire field with damage, attack speed on all other units, and a variety of other buffs. For instance, Fiona is performing better against many factions that do not have instant burst damage. But against instant burst damage and factions, Fiona loses quite easily, compared to Xeron doing pretty much the opposite. Xeron can handle instant burst with his immunities and the immunity of Fawn in the far future, but depending against what factions and units they face, it no longer does well against super sustain builds like Adela, Astral and so on. Yes, they can beat them, but it's pretty much 50-50 with Xeron. Sometimes you beat them and sometimes they beat you, and I think the latter happens more often than the first one though. Before we start on the specialties, I have to say that even Fiona has received some sort of a tweak from after she was released. We have some different numbers from our first translation that we see on the screen, so just to make sure you are aware, perhaps even in global, our numbers will be different than what we see or talk in this video, just that the buffs should remain similar. So the first specialty is like any other second generation leader, buffs specific units and debuffs specific units whenever this hero is on the battlefield. The percentages are given here on screen, they're all different on each hero I believe, and they are pretty decent, but I doubt it's an insane boost to your field since it's only attack and HP %, if again I am not mistaken with my translations, as well as fire spell cooldown and mana consumption of fire spells are reduced by 20%. Moving to the second star specialty, one of her spells that looks like a Hellhound will buff all friendly Inferno units damage and critical damage by 20%, which lasts 8 seconds whenever this spell is cast. And now the third specialty, enemy defense units battle efficiency decreases by 3%. I suppose again that's all of their stats like defense, damage reduction and even damaging stats, but I am not sure since we do not entirely know what the efficiency of a unit actually means, as well as buffs all friendly Inferno units critical damage by 20%, and when they gain hatred or soul points, also increases another 2% of unit damage and damage reduction. This buff lasts entire battle and stacks up to 20 times. Now the hatred and the soul points are something what units will have below their HP bars. This is strictly something related to either class changed units or an effect on the unit's weapons, where they get an additional skill trigger which needs specific stacks for it to be cast and so on. More or less, it is just from the future features that we do not yet have, and this effect here is a global, so it also means you get this exact same thing even if you play Xeron. And now the fourth specialty, this one will buff her ultimate, which will grant all friendly Inferno units with 200% attack speed for 8 seconds whenever this spell is cast, as well as buffs friendly melee units with something like a fire shield which should be around 40% of their max HP value. Also buffs either 800 penetration or 800 piercing for our backline units, that being casters and ranged. Now, when I said before that she was tweaked, the first numbers we had were 300% on the attack speed and 50% on the HP % shield. So the fourth specialty got a little tweak here. I suppose having all of the Infernos be on like a jealous frenzy mode was too powerful, and after this tweak I'm not sure if Inferno was as dominant as prior to that. But after I level up some more accounts, I will see how much they perform. Now instead of moving to her ultimate, first I will move to one of her other skills since it's Inferno specific too, called Hellhound. This spell inflicts fire damage on enemies in a large area and reduces their damage and attack speed by 20%. and adds one layer of the burn effect on them. Each layer of the burn will reduce 2% damage reduction and it lasts the entire battle. This burn effect can stack 50 times or up to 50%. I am unsure, but I think it is 50 stacks. And further, from her specialties, every time this spell is cast, it will buff Infernos with 20% damage and 20% critical damage, which I think it's not stackable. And now for her ultimate, called the Purgatory Roar or something along those lines. It reduces defense of all enemy units by 20%, and adds a burn effect on them for 18 seconds, causing 3% HP damage every 1.5 seconds and also adding 5 layers of the burn effect on them. The burn effects, I believe, is only per spell cast and not per spell proc. From the specialties added onto this, they will also buff the attack speed of all Infernos by 200% per spell cast for 8 seconds and adds a shield as well to all melee units and so forth. Honestly, this pretty much seems like they wanted to make Inferno try to outlast the enemy, debuff them enough so the sustain would not be the way to beat the Inferno. And perhaps they succeeded. This is actually one of the way I think to stop the sustain builds is by just stacking enough debuffs and just enough HP percent damages for their heals or stuff to do a lot less. But keep in mind, these debuffs can also be dispelled, as there was nothing about them being non-dispellable, just that they last the entire battle. So as good as it sounds, in my own opinion, Fiona performs a lot better versus the sustain builds like Astral, Adela, but falls quite short against those who can burst them down due to not many units having any immunity. Most of their backline can pretty much get wiped since burst factions most of the time focus the entire field or backliners, rather than the front line, which most of the sustain builds do damage. Anyways, that is pretty much it for this hero. Before we finish the video, what I noticed from most of the replays is that Abyss Lord versus a fully decked out Devil, and we're talking literally every single thing maxed on Devil, performed better or even same DPS numbers under Fiona. Meaning the champion Abyss Lord, by just being 6 stars and perhaps some potential and decent emblems, performed better than 6 stars Awakened, and 6 stars Double Awakened Devil with maxed weapon and insane emblems under Fiona. So for us, at the same point in time, Abyss Lord should be more than superior against the Devil. You shouldn't put too much thought on this though, since most who play Inferno will max both of these units anyway, but it was just one of those interesting things that I have noticed. It was just sort of like a glimpse towards the future, the damage dealers of the future and so forth. Thanks for watching guys, and stay safe out there.